It is the end of a chapter, a new era, a new season. How many of us are leaving Newbold? Can you stand for me if you're leaving Newbold? Go on, stand. Oh, guys, I hope you've had a wonderful time here. I hope you've enjoyed your time. May God be with you as you go onto this new season, this new chapter of life. If you were here for the beginning of the semester, I preached a sermon. I asked all the single people to stand up. So, if somebody is standing up and you haven't had the opportunity to approach them as yet, now is the time to go all in. Put all your cards on the table. Withhold nothing. You just need, one of those things, you just need to go for it. You just need to go up to them and say, listen, feel this material. Do you know what this is? Boyfriend material. Yeah. Like, you just got, and the thing is this. Sorry, guys, please sit down. If it goes wrong, you will never see them again. But sometimes you've just got to go all in. You've just got to withhold nothing and just say, listen, I'm going to go all for it. And here we are at the end of a semester. It's the end of a chapter. It's the beginning of a new era. And you never know what God has in store. When we come to the book of Exodus, for me, the book of Exodus begins, it's like a new season. If you watch box sets, you got season 1, season 2. For me, Genesis is season 1. And you come to Exodus, it's now season 2. And it's like Moses begins by giving us a recap of what happened at the end of season 1. And so it kind of like previously on the Bible. And he starts to just tell us, listen, Joseph and his family have moved to Egypt. They've arrived, they've landed, and he goes through the family that's there, and he tells us that 70 in all went to Egypt. They went to Egypt by invitation. When they were called to Egypt, they were renowned. Joseph was doing big things. And so Joseph brings his family. And one of the things that the Pharaoh at that time, he said, listen, take the choice land. Go here, settle. You guys do your thing. And they were well loved because of the good work that Joseph had done. Everybody knew about them, knew what they were doing. But as you continue to read in the narrative, things, it's like this turns into a tragedy very, very quickly. We already know from the end of Genesis that, everybody kind of passed away. But, you're watching this box set. It's the beginnings. There has to be some sort of twist or some sort of drama that is created. And so here, straight away, now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died. You're like, man, whoa, okay. But the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied. And so here, it kind of pushes our minds back to season 1. Because it's like, where did we hear this fruitful and multiplied? Well, you know what? When God created the world, this was the instruction that he gave to Adam and Eve. He said, listen, be fruitful and multiply. And then as you go through season 1, he gets to this part where he's talking with Abraham, and he says to Abraham, listen, I'm going to bless your people. I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to make your descendants like the stars of the sky, like the sand of the seashore. I am going to bless you. So when you come to the beginning of season chapter 2, here we are in Exodus, the second book of the Bible. It tells us that these Israelites are doing as God commanded. God said, be fruitful and multiply. And the text says they were fruitful and multiplied greatly and became exceedingly numerous. God is blessing the children of Israel. But here's the problem. the blessings that God is pouring upon them becomes a threat to the new Pharaoh. Don't miss this. Because the new Pharaoh, he's coming along and he's saying, this nation over here, they're getting a bit too big for their boots. They're getting quite vast. And the Bible tells us how this new Pharaoh that came to power did not know who Joseph was. Now, I think that is probably an incorrect translation, or in our English language, we haven't been able to expound it as it probably wanted, because how is it that we are living so many thousand years after the fact and we know who Joseph was? And you've got this Pharaoh and the Bible saying he didn't know who Joseph was. And so I think that's not what it's saying. What it's saying is he did not have this experiential experience. That doesn't make sense. Okay, he did not have that intimate knowledge. The things that Joseph had done did not impact him like it did the others. And so now you have this Pharaoh who he knows of Joseph, he knows what he's done, but it didn't impact him in the same way. So now this children of Israel, this people that are being blessed, this blessing is now a threat to the Pharaoh. Don't you know that when you are blessed by God, some people that don't know Jesus are going to be threatened by you? You know, when you're just blessed and good things are happening to you, and then you've got people that coming on with haterade. You know, you did well in your exams. Oh, you must have cheated. Or you're being blessed in other ways, but people are just not celebrating with you. And so here the blessings of God seem to be coming as a threat to Pharaoh. This nation which was once invited in. It was invited. It was said, listen, you come here, reside here. They helped to build up Egypt. But now, because of the good work that Joseph had done, it had really allowed Egypt to survive. The Israelites had come because they wanted a better future. But now they are under threat from a new government. Hello, somebody. Does it sound familiar? If you've been following in the news, you would understand that the Windrush era, this group of West Indians that were invited to this country. They were invited with the hope of, listen, we need help with the jobs. We need all of this help to build up the economy. And so they were invited over. But now a new government is in place. A new government that may not have had that experiential relationship with how these Windrush people had helped build up the economy. Now they're in place and they're saying, well, listen, we need to send these guys home. Ouch. Spoke to my parents and I said, why did you come over? They said there was an invitation that was given. They said, listen, if you want, we need help with jobs, nursing, building, and all this stuff, so you come. And they said, we came for hope of a better life. And so I see this similarity here where these Israelites, they came because there was a famine and they hoped for a better life. But now because of the blessings of God, this new Pharaoh, he comes to the throne. Some scholars say that this was Ammuz. He started the 18th dynasty. So here you have this Pharaoh. He wants to build an empire for himself. And he is, now watch this. This nation is a threat to his dynasty. He's saying, listen, these guys are becoming quite numerous. They're becoming this exceedingly great nation. If I am attacked, they may turn against me and they may fight against me. And so I guess in a sense of self-preservation, he says, listen, we need to deal with this great multitude here. Because of how they are being blessed by God, they become a threat to Ammuz, and he's now saying we need to deal with them. And so he says, listen, we need to put them into a forced labor. And the text tells us this. It tells us that he put slave masters over them to oppress them, and he dealt with them ruthlessly. From verses 12 to 14, you see these two words twice. oppress ruthlessly for no fault of their own. Here you have the Israelites. They've come and literally all they've done is been fruitful and multiply. And you know, we're all adults here, but we're using PG language, but you all know what that means. Yeah? So they were fruitful and they multiplied. And that's because God has blessed them. He told them to do it. But when you see the promises that he said to Abraham, this is how I'm going to bless you, you see the blessings coming into fruition. Now, because of these blessings, the Pharaoh is threatened. And so he oppresses them and deals with them ruthlessly. You ever been in that situation? You've been in that situation where I'm in a difficult situation, not because I've done something wrong, but because, you know what, I've actually followed what is right. And now I find myself in a difficult circumstance. You know what? I stood up for what I believe, and I said, listen, I can't work on Sabbath. And because I've said that, I've lost my job, and so I'm now in this difficult situation, not because I've done anything wrong, but actually because I've done something right. I've stood up and I've said, listen, I'm going to be baptized. But now you're just working for the church, but your family is not happy with how much time you're spending at church. And you're just like, well, you know what? I'm just doing what is good. But now there's all of this turmoil in the home. I'm just trying to do my job. I'm just trying to help out as best as I can. But you're just being persecuted for doing right. Here's where the children of Israel find themselves. And this Pharaoh, because he wants to build this dynasty, he wants to create this empire. Scholars say this. The forced labor practice whereby some are coerced to serve the ends of the others is not mere abusiveness. Rather, it is an essential part of the great state building program. Great governments must build great buildings in order to produce permanent monuments to their power and greatness. Ammuz is not just wanting to stifle them, but he wants to build a great empire. He may have seen some of the pyramids that the previous Pharaoh may have built, and he said, I am going to build something greater. But the interesting thing is that the more he oppressed and was ruthless with them, the more they were fruitful and multiplied. Have you ever been in that situation where you're trying everything you can to get rid of something, but the more you try, the more appear? You ever been in that situation? I have a drive on at my house. And the guy who laid the drive didn't, you know, you've got to, Andreas was telling me, you've got to lay this layer to stop the weeds coming through. So around the edges of my drive, all of these weeds keep on springing up. And it's the most annoying and frustrating thing in my life at the moment. Especially when it comes to summer, because they just keep on shooting up. And so I out of frustration, every time I come home, I just pull up one, I pull up. I've got weed killer and I've just sprayed it around and so forth. But the more I do to try and kill these scrawny little weeds, the more that pop up. Do you know how annoying and frustrating that is? And so I can imagine how this Pharaoh feels, because you know what? It's like, I'm doing everything that I can. I'm trying to give them a hard day's work, and you know what? You're tired, and you're thinking, oh man, these guys are going to be too tired now. I've worked them hard, so they're going to have no energy to be fruitful and multiply. They just did a long day's work. You know, they've been, making bricks, and I've been lashing them. So they're going home beaten and bruised. So they're not going to be able to be fruitful. But these guys are being more fruitful and multiplying more. And so he must be getting so frustrated, like, oh my goodness, what can I do? I don't know what to do. And so here's the interesting thing, because Ellen White says, under the guise of Satan, the rumor had kind of gone out that a deliverer was going to be coming soon. And so the devil prompted Pharaoh to say, listen, you now need to kill all of the male children under 2 years old. Which is basically like a prequel. It's like, in some films, what they do is they give you the solution to the plot hidden in the beginning of the movie or somewhere, just to kind of say, and then when you watch it again, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So here is a prequel to basically what happens in the Nativity. The devil didn't really change his tactics. Yeah, there's a deliverer that's coming. And so here Pharaoh, under the guise of the devil, he sends out word to say, listen, please go and kill all of the Hebrew male children. Now he goes to these Hebrew midwives. There's debate whether they are actually Hebrew because of the translation. Some Bibles will translate it Hebrew women or women of the Hebrew slaves. But when you look at their names are Shipira and Pua, which are actually Hebrew names. You kind of lean more to the fact that they are Hebrew women. And especially because when you come further down, it says that they feared God. Now, let me backstep a moment, because in the midst of all of these trials and tribulations, you don't see the name God. There's no mention of God's name. And I want to say this to you, because you know what? Sometimes we're going through difficult times in our life. We're going through hard times. We're being persecuted. Whatever stuff, whatever drama, whatever junk, whatever rubbish is going on in our lives. And sometimes we just can't see God. We're going through all this stuff and we're just like, well, where is God? But let me say this to you, and this is where we find hope. Because throughout all of this, God is still blessing them. They're still being fruitful and multiplying. Sometimes you don't see it when you're going through the drama in your life. You don't see how God is watching over you, or the goodness that he's doing in your life. But I want to say this to you, that he is always with you. He's always blessing you. But sometimes the drama just clouds our eyes. And we're just like, man, why am I going through all of this stuff? Here the children of Israel are being oppressed, and the Pharaoh is being ruthless with them. But still the blessings of God are pouring out. No mention of God up till now. So the Pharaoh turns it up. He goes to the Hebrew midwives and says, listen, you need to kill all of these male children that are born. And these two women, they go all in. They're in the same scenario and situation as all the other children of Israel. They're being persecuted. They have to do hard labor. They're in the same dynamic. And sometimes when we get in that state, we kind of cloud over. We kind of just give up. And we have this, I can't be bothered attitude. When you're going through stuff, sometimes it just demotivates you. To say, listen, man, I just can't be bothered. I'm not going to give my all. And so here's the interesting thing, and we spoke last night in Vespers about depression and what depression does, and how it gives you lack of motivation. It makes you tired. It makes you weary. And there were so many other things that he was saying that identify depression. And depression often comes when you're going through stuff. When you're in the midst of drama and chaos, depression comes. And now I don't have this motivation. I don't have this drive to do what I would normally do. But in the midst of this, you have these Hebrew midwives who go all in. They withhold nothing. They put all their chips on the table and say, listen, I serve God. Pharaoh's come along and said to them, please, can you just listen, just kill when a male child comes. If it's a male child, just check and just kill it. Disobeying Pharaoh came with severe punishment. But here, in the midst of this drama, in the midst of this stuff, these two women say, do you know what? I'm withholding nothing. I'm going all in. I'm going to give it everything that I have, and I'm going to make sure that I serve God. You go to chapter 2, and you see Moses' parents. Moses' parents are in exactly the same situation. They give birth to a male child in the midst of this edict that has gone out saying, if you have a male child, he will be killed. Having children at any time in life is a joyous occasion. But here you are, you find yourself in this scenario where if you have a male child, there must be this element of disappointment. Like, oh man, now I have to try and make sure that his life is spared. I have to watch over him. It adds an added dynamic to a situation that should normally be joyful. But when you look at Hebrews, it tells us that these parents went all in. They withheld nothing. They said, listen, I see beauty in the face of this child. They believed that Moses could be the deliverer. And so regardless of what the Pharaoh say, they now go about, and this is where you hear this famous story about Moses in the basket and put in the river, because they're doing all of this to try and protect him. Because they have faith in God in the midst of drama. How can you be in the midst of drama and still have faith in God? The Egyptians believed in something called Ma'at. Ma'at. Ma'at simply means order out of chaos. Pharaoh was the physical embodiment of their sun god Ra. It was his job to bring about Ma'at. It was his job to bring order out of the chaos. And so he steps onto the throne, and he believes that the kingdom is chaotic, and he now needs to bring order to all of this. The beginning of Exodus for the Israelites is quite chaotic. But it is God's job to be Ma'at. God is Ma'at. God is the one that brings order out of chaos. And I believe that especially for Moses' parents and these Hebrew midwives, they believed that God was Ma'at. He was the one that was going to bring order out of this chaos. And therefore, I withhold nothing. And listen, I'm preaching this sermon to myself. Because when stuff goes on, when drama is going on, sometimes I said this, I just retreat into my cave. You just sit down, sometimes I just don't have energy, like whatever. As Christians, we need to always withhold nothing. Give our all. Do the best that we can. The Bible says, whatever you find your hands to do, do it to the best of your might and ability. So even though we're going through drama, we're going through stuff, we're going through issues, we serve a God who is going to bring order out of the chaos. And so therefore, do the best that you can do at all times. Withhold nothing. Put it all on the table. Throw all of your chips in. Run your race like it is the end at all times. It's difficult. I say I'm preaching this to myself, because I know it's difficult. But that's what we do as Christians. Throw your all in. Do the best that you can do. As we journey through the book of Exodus, we're going to see so many examples. But here's the interesting thing. God is mad. God is the one that brings order to chaos. Sometimes we feel that we need to do it. Sometimes we feel, I need to bring order to this chaos. This is chaotic. Let me be the one to handle and deal with this situation. How do you think Moses felt? Moses grew up with people whispering in his ear, you know what, bruv? I think you could be the deliverer. I think you could be the one that bring us out of the drama that we're in. Moses grew up thinking that from his birth, his parents thought it. So I'm assuming that he would have heard it somewhere along the way. So when you come to once Moses is grown up, you come to this point where Moses, he sees one man abusing a fellow Hebrew. Moses comes along, he sees, remember they're being ruthless, so he must have seen this many a time. But today's something different. Moses sees an Egyptian abusing a Hebrew. Watch what the text says. Moses looked this way and that way. And there must be this conflict in his mind. Yeah, I think I'm the deliverer. I am the deliverer. I need to deliver my people. I need to be the one to bring order out of this chaos. And so Moses looks this way and that way because you know what? When you're stepping outside of the will of God, when you're trying to do what only God can do, a lot of the time we've got to do it in secret. We've got to do all these underhanded dealings in secret. And so here Moses, he looks this way and that way and goes and kills the Egyptian. But don't you know everything that you do in secret will always be uncovered? You hide a body in the sand and the wind comes and blows and then toes are sticking up. Because it is God's job to bring order out of the chaos. And as long as we can focus on that, God will bring order out of the chaos. Whatever you're going through in this new season of life, as you students are moving and going back wherever you are, it doesn't matter what you go through. And the devil is a liar. And he's coming for you. And one of the ways that he's going to come for you is to just put you through drama and issues. And you know what? If we can go all in through our issues, oh man, just know that God will bring you through. When we go through this book of Exodus, Moses has to run away because he gets found out for this deed that he did. And that brings us to chapter 3. But at the end of chapter 2, it says this. During the long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groanings and remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. God is concerned about you. No matter what you're going through, and I know as I look through this congregation, there are many of you that are going through stuff. And I want to just say this, God is concerned for you, and it is God's job to bring order to the chaos of your life. What you need to do is just go all in. Give God your all. Withhold nothing. And I withhold a part. I hold stuff back. When I'm on the mountain, when I'm feeling good, man, I go all in. Yeah. You want me on your team when things are going good. But when things are going bad, God rebuked me when I was preparing the sermon. Because I know this is for me. And so my covenant today is I'm going all in. It's not my job to bring order to chaos in my life. That's God's job. It's my job to just withhold nothing. I'm just going to serve you, God. I'm going to worship you with my whole heart.